Listen closely. If you strain your ears against the silence of the present, you can almost hear the past. It begins as a low hum, the sound of a million conversations fading into a singular anxious murmur. Then a sharp crackle of radio static cuts through the air. The murmur swells into a roar of voices, some cheering with hope, others crying out in fear. The rhythmic chugging of a steam locomotive grows louder, not with the promise of a pleasant journey, but with the desperate weight of countless souls clinging to its very frame. This is the soundscape of 1947. Imagine the frantic packing, the hurried goodbyes whispered at thresholds. Think of the creak of bullock carts laden with meager possessions, their wooden wheels tracing paths of exile on dusty roads. Hear the cries of children separated from their parents in the swirling, terrified crowds. The promise of freedom, so long awaited, had arrived. But it was accompanied by a terrifying cacophony that no one had truly anticipated. These auditory fragments form a haunting mosaic of the human experience during the partition. It must be felt, it must be heard. For nearly 2 centuries, the British Raj had cast a long shadow over the Indian subcontinent. It was an empire built on commerce, conquest, and a carefully constructed hierarchy of power. The British brought railways, a unified legal system, and the English language, weaving a complex network that connected disparate regions. Yet this infrastructure of control came at a great cost. India's vast resources were systematically funneled towards enriching Britain. The Indian National Congress, founded in 1885, initially sought greater participation for Indians within the existing British framework. However, it gradually evolved into the primary vehicle for the independence movement, advocating for complete sovereignty. Simultaneously, the All India Muslim League, established in 1906, emerged to safeguard the political rights of the Muslim minority, fearing that their interests would be overlooked. The Second World War proved to be a critical turning point. Britain, exhausted and economically shattered by the conflict, found its grip on its global empire weakening. Indian soldiers had fought and died for the Allied cause, and the demand for freedom in return was louder and more insistent than ever. The cry for "Quit India" echoed across the subcontinent, a powerful, unified demand for the British to leave. The end of empire was no longer a distant dream, it was an impending reality. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the Mahatma, was the spiritual and moral conscience of the independence movement. His philosophy of nonviolent resistance, or satyagraha, had mobilized the masses and captured the world's imagination. Gandhi dreamed of a unified secular India where all communities could live together in harmony. He was vehemently opposed to partition, viewing it as a vivisection of the motherland. Jawaharlal Nehru, Gandhi's political heir and the first Prime Minister of India, was a charismatic and modernizing leader. A Fabian socialist educated at Cambridge, Nehru envisioned a progressive, industrial and secular India. He was a central negotiator for the Indian National Congress. While he shared Gandhi's ideal of a united India, he was also a pragmatist. Faced with escalating violence, he reluctantly came to accept partition as a painful but necessary price. In stark opposition stood Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the formidable and uncompromising leader of the All India Muslim League. Initially a proponent of Hindu-Muslim unity, Jinnah became convinced that the rights and culture of the Muslim minority would not be safe in a Hindu-dominated India. He became the chief architect of the two-nation theory, the belief that Hindus and Muslims were two distinct nations deserving of separate homelands. For Jinnah, partition was not a tragedy, but a triumph. The final, and perhaps most catalytic figure in this drama, was Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India. A dashing naval commander and a cousin of the British king, Mountbatten was sent to India with a single, urgent mandate: to oversee the transfer of power and extricate Britain as quickly as possible. Charming, ambitious, and driven by a tight deadline, he dramatically accelerated the timeline for independence. His decision to bring the date forward from June 1948 to August 1947 left precious little time for careful planning. To draw the new borders, a boundary commission was established, chaired by Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a man who had never set foot in India before. Radcliffe was given just 5 weeks to perform this Herculean task, to draw a line that would divide provinces, sever communities, and redefine the identities of millions. The Radcliffe line was drawn in secret. The final map was kept under wraps even from Indian and Pakistani leaders, until 2 days after independence was declared. The line itself was a crude surgical instrument. It cut through villages, leaving one half in India and the other in Pakistan. It sliced through farms, separating a farmer from his fields. It severed rivers and canal systems, creating immediate disputes over water resources. The border was drawn based on outdated maps and census data, paying little heed to the lived realities of the people it would affect. It was a line drawn not with wisdom, but with haste. The provinces of Punjab and Bengal bore the brunt of partition's fury. In Punjab, the announcement of the border ignited a firestorm of violence. The province was a tinderbox of communal tension, with well-organized militias on all sides. As soon as the line was revealed, an orgy of ethnic cleansing began. Villages were set ablaze, crops were destroyed, and places of worship were desecrated. The violence was characterized by extreme brutality, driven by a desire to erase the other's very presence from the land. Bengal experienced a different, though equally tragic, form of upheaval. The partition severed a vital economic and cultural unit. Calcutta, the great industrial and port city, went to India, while its agricultural hinterland, rich in jute, went to East Pakistan. This economic amputation created immense hardship. The ensuing migration was more a steady, painful stream of refugees moving back and forth across a porous and contested border for decades to come. The human cost in these fractured provinces was staggering. Neighbors turned on neighbors, and friends became mortal enemies overnight. The violence was particularly horrific for women who were subjected to mass abduction, rape, and mutilation on an unimaginable scale. The stories that emerged are filled with unspeakable trauma, of families slaughtered, of children lost, of a world turned upside down. The partition of these two great provinces stands as one of the most brutal and tragic consequences of the hasty division. The drawing of the Radcliffe Line triggered the largest mass migration in human history. In just a matter of months, more than 14 million people were forced to abandon their ancestral homes. This was not an orderly relocation. It was a panicked, desperate flight for survival. The roads of Punjab and Bengal became rivers of humanity. People left with only what they could carry, leaving behind their land, their property, their histories, and even the graves of their ancestors. These marching columns, known as kafilas, stretched for miles, vulnerable and exposed. They were easy targets for marauding gangs who sought revenge, loot, or both. The journey was fraught with danger at every step. Travelers faced starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion. Disease, particularly cholera, spread rapidly through the columns, claiming countless lives. The elderly and the very young were often the first to perish, their bodies left by the roadside. Every mile was marked by uncertainty and terror. Amidst the widespread brutality, there were also extraordinary acts of kindness and courage. Stories abound of people from one community risking their lives to shelter their neighbors from the other community. A Muslim family might hide their Sikh friends from a violent mob, or a Hindu family might share their last morsel of food with a fleeing Muslim family. This tidal wave of humanity reshaped the demography of the entire subcontinent. Cities and villages saw their populations change overnight. The long road home was, for many, a road to a life of permanent exile. Among the most potent symbols of the partition are the refugee trains. These were vessels of hope and horror, carrying millions to what they prayed would be safety. The platform swelled with desperate crowds, people fighting for a foothold on any part of the train, inside the carriages, on the footboards, and most precariously, on the roofs. Each train that departed was packed with fear, grief, and a sliver of hope for a new beginning. But these journeys were among the most dangerous undertakings of the entire Exodus. The trains quickly became targets for organized attacks. The attackers would block the tracks, force the train to a halt, and then swarm the carriages. They would slaughter the passengers with swords, spears, and firearms. The goal was total annihilation, a brutal form of ethnic cleansing conducted on the railways. These trains became known as ghost trains, or trains of death. Often a train would arrive at its destination in eerie silence, its carriages filled not with living refugees but with the butchered bodies of all who had been on board. Slogans like, "A gift from Pakistan" or "A gift from India" were sometimes scrawled on the sides of the carriages, a chilling testament to the depravity of the violence. The stories told by survivors are among the most harrowing accounts of the partition. They speak of hiding under the bodies of the dead to escape notice of witnessing the slaughter of their entire families. The image of the crowded, blood-soaked train remains an indelible scar on the psyche of both India and Pakistan, a powerful and tragic symbol of a journey that was meant to lead to freedom but instead led, for so many, to their deaths. On August 14th and 15th, 1947, India and Pakistan were born as independent nations. The midnight hour was marked by jubilant celebrations, flags were unfurled, anthems were sung. Yet this new dawn was cast under a long dark shadow. While the political elites celebrated in the capitals, the countryside was ablaze with violence and millions of refugees were still struggling to find safety. For millions, it was a moment of profound triumph, the culmination of a long struggle against colonial rule. The birth of these two nations was inextricably linked to an unprecedented human tragedy. For the refugees who survived the journey, the ordeal was far from over. They arrived with nothing but the clothes on their backs, finding themselves strangers in a strange land. Huge, sprawling refugee camps sprang up around major cities. These camps were squalid and overcrowded, lacking basic sanitation, clean water, and adequate food. Disease was rampant. The promise of a new life and a new nation felt hollow to those languishing in the misery of the camps. Life was a daily struggle for survival. The psychological trauma of partition was deep and enduring. Survivors carried with them the scars of what they had witnessed and endured, the loss of family, property, and a sense of belonging. Many suffered from what we would now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, haunted by nightmares and flashbacks for the rest of their lives. The violence had shattered their trust in humanity. This collective trauma became a foundational element of both nations' identities. The division left behind a legacy of unresolved conflicts. The most contentious was the dispute over Kashmir, which became an immediate flashpoint and remains one of the most volatile disputes in the world today. More than 75 years have passed since the summer of 1947, yet the wounds of partition have not fully healed. They linger in the collective memory of South Asia. The legacy of partition is visible in the militarized border that separates India and Pakistan, heard in the heated political rhetoric that still erupts between the two nations. The ghosts of 1947 have never been fully laid to rest. They continue to haunt the subcontinent. Remembering partition is a complex and often painful act. For many years there was a national silence surrounding the human tragedy. Official histories focused on the triumph of independence, glossing over the horrific violence. It is only in recent decades that there has been a concerted effort to excavate these memories. This process of remembrance is vital. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our past, about the capacity for ordinary people to commit extraordinary violence. The stories of survivors are not just tales of loss, they are powerful testaments to resilience, courage, and the enduring human spirit. They remind us of a time when a shared culture was torn asunder and warn us of the dangers of religious nationalism and divisive politics. Listening to these stories is an act of empathy. Ultimately, the lesson of partition is a somber one. It teaches us that freedom can come at an unbearable price, and that lines drawn on maps can create wounds that fester for generations. It serves as a powerful reminder of the fragility of peace and the catastrophic consequences of allowing difference to curdle into hatred. As we look back on the chaos and tragedy of 1947, we have a responsibility to not only mourn the dead and honor the survivors, but also to learn from their experience. We must remember the pain, the loss, and the brokenness of partition, not to perpetuate old grievances, but to ensure that such a tragedy is never allowed to happen again.